Thanks for joining us for the Fight for Your Marriage podcast with Charlene and Lori. This is a place where you can find hope for your marriage through Jesus Christ. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Fight for Your Marriage podcast. I am Lori, and I'm so excited that you're with us today to join in for a few minutes while we talk about a topic today that is very important, and that's the topic of friendship. You know, Jesus had a lot of friends in the Bible that we can see him interacting with, and he had a very tight, close inner circle of friends. And we can learn so much from his relationship and how important friendships truly are in our life. And with that being said, I know that when you walk through problems in your marriage, sometimes as a result of that, you see friendships change. You know, when people are walking through separation and divorce, they might see couple friends walk away from one person in the marriage. They might have to move to a new area of town and you no longer see the friends that you used to have, or you've switched jobs and the friends from work are gone now. And so we know and are very aware and sensitive to the fact that when you're walking through struggles in your marriage, sometimes that ripples out and you also see changes and struggles in friendships. And so today we're going to talk about friendship. We're going to talk about connecting with friends, how to handle rejection from friends, and how to find friends, because it's something that we all need. So our guest today is Kristen Strong, and she's the author of the book, Desperate Woman Seeks Friends, Real Talk About Connection, Rejection, and Trying Again for the Friendships You Need. And she has got a lot to say on this topic and a lot of tips for men and women on how to be vulnerable with each other, how to find the friends. Men, I know sometimes it's harder for you to find friends because you don't have some of the connections that women may have through children. And so you're going to walk away today with ideas and understanding how important it is to be a good friend and how important it is to maintain those friend relationships. So I hope you enjoy this talk with Kristen Strong. Well, Kristen, thank you for being with us today. I'm excited to talk about the topic of friendship with you.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here, Lori. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, well, let's start. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your family.
Mm-hmm. You bet. Well, I'm Kristen Strong, and I'm married to an Air Force veteran. He was a career veteran. He was in for 26 years. I was around for about 20 of those years. And we have 3 children together. We have twin sons who are 25 and a daughter who's 21. We just got back from Spain, actually, where our daughter is studying abroad. So that was a fun little trip. But we live in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and my husband works at the Air Force Academy on the civilian side of the fence these days, since he retired from active duty.
Oh, that's neat. Well, thank you for your service, because I know we have a lot of military spouses that listen to our podcast, and it's not an easy journey being a military spouse, is it?
It wasn't for me. I'll tell you, I grew up completely opposite of the military lifestyle. I grew up so my maiden name is O'Neill, and I grew up on O'Neill Lane. And so everybody who lived on O'Neill Lane's last name was O'Neill. And so I grew up in a deep well of familiarity and family. I knew everybody. I'm from small town Oklahoma, outside Osage County, outside of Ponca City, Oklahoma. And so then went to college, met and fell in love with David Strong, he had been on the enlisted side of the fence, but he was transitioning to the officer side of the house there, and commissioning into the Air Force. And so that began, when we married, that began the Air Force life, where you know, it was a pretty stark contrast to go from knowing everybody and surrounded by family to not knowing anybody and kind of figuring out even, I mean, you talk about loneliness, I've never been by myself before until that had happened, really. So yeah, figuring that out, and then how to start over every 3 years ish, that there was a learning curve on that for me.
Yeah, that I can imagine that there's a season of loneliness that just gets on repeat in that type of situation.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, you're kind of having to build everything, reinvent the wheel, and we were in some places, a good deal of time, like I said, 3-ish years. If you were married to a pilot, it was probably more like 18 months. And so, yeah, but it was still hard for your girl here.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, the people that are listening to this episode, many of them are walking through separation and divorce, like we had talked about. And when that happens, many people see that their friendships change. There might be couple friends that you used to do life with that now feel they have to choose, well, which spouse am I going to go with? Or you might be forced to move to a different area because of the divorce or separation that's happening. And so you're starting over in a new home, you're going through this marriage crisis, and your friends are gone. And so today we wanted to really just talk about friendship and about loneliness, and give you, our listeners, encouragement on how you can navigate the season of life with friends and finding your people, because the Lord wants us to have friendships. He had friends, and he wants us to enjoy that area of life. And so, in thinking about friendships, let me ask you a question. Why do you think we tend to wear masks when we are with our friends? And sometimes we don't give them the full picture of who we are. We kind of give them half the story and wear masks hiding from, who we really are with some of our friends.
Well, I think shame has a lot to do with it. We're embarrassed. We think we're the only ones kind of dealing with this particular problem because, the older I'm 50, and the older I get, the more it seems like the more life, the hurdles of life get bigger. And so I can easily fall into the line of thinking that says, oh, you know what, if you share this with her, if you're this real with her, she is not going to like you anymore. She likes you a little bit more if you're buttoned up and kind of have your act together. And I guess the flip side of that is the freeing part of being 50 is I care less about that kind of thing.
Yes, I agree.
You just get to where it's very freeing. You just don't care what people think. And I have done it. I have shared. I mean, I have friends who know like all the good, the bad, the ugly. And so I thankfully have, now listen, that doesn't mean I've never shared before in my history and it wasn't received well. Sometimes people are just going to be real people-y and not respect your vulnerability as they should have and your heart as they should have. But I have found the vast majority of folks that I'm vulnerable with are happy to be vulnerable right back with me. And often they have the same struggles. And if they don't have the same struggles, they have an incredible empathy for the struggle I do have, or they have another struggle that's just as quote unquote, not pretty or as newsworthy as mine. It just looks different. Yeah. It looks differently. So I think it's just hard to get to that spot though, to where you can really trust that. And we just are inclined to kind of hold back and just let the mask kind of sit there rather than, feel like we can be real with somebody.
Yeah. And when we're often vulnerable with people, it's when they will sometimes let down their guard to also open up and share something that maybe they have been carrying and dealing with as well.
Absolutely. And I've even found, there's power in being the one that, it's awesome if somebody always does that first. So you feel then permission to do the same. That is just not how life works
Yeah.
generally for most of us. If we feel the Holy Spirit convicting us to unburden something on our chest, or, we're feeling like that is just a next step we need to do. Often we have to be the ones to go first and do that. But when we do that, I have found success in the reception of it much more often than, feeling like I was just kind of shut down in it.
Right. And such an important thought for men as well, because women, we are usually more inclined to share, with people that we just meet. Like, what do you want to know about me? I'll tell you what.
Right.
But men are usually more inclined. They usually keep their circle tighter. And then often that means that because of that, they don't open up with one another and share. And we have found that so many times that men say, I've been secretly struggling with X, Y, and Z, but they've never had another godly man and a godly friend that they could open up to. So I think that friendship and being the person that would be vulnerable is so important for men and women to do.
Yeah, I agree. I think sadly we've given the impression for the fellas in our lives that feelings is the F word.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we're there, maybe it's just in the West here more in particular, that they're not encouraged to share those things.
Right.
And listen, you can share. And I've heard somebody say, I don't know who originally said this, it wasn't me, but like you can, feelings always get a ride in the car. They don't have to drive the car. They can sit in the car and be a part of the experience. And sometimes I think that makes that kind of component a little more palatable for the fellas in our lives. But yeah, they absolutely need their people. I mean, Jesus had his people. And so if Jesus had his people and he was a perfect human, and he needed his people, then all of us, men and women, we need our people too.
We do. Well, talking about seasons of loneliness, and thinking about that, why do you think God allows us to go through seasons of just loneliness where maybe things have been uprooted and changed? And do you think that's a thing that he can use that season in our life, or is it something we should be climbing and clawing to get out of?
Yes. Well, I absolutely think it's a tool he uses for our blessing. Now, it certainly doesn't feel like it when you're in the midst of it, 100%. But if he has allowed it, it somehow is for our gain. And in my own life, I can say I've been asked to go through seasons of loneliness. And let me emphasize that we are often, maybe not often, but we are at least every whip stitch have to go through seasons of loneliness. The Lord will never ask us to permanently go through loneliness.
Right.
That is not his will for us ever. But seasons of loneliness, yes. And what I have found is often the Lord will use a season of loneliness to, like, he winnows away the distractions to widen my focus on something. And that in my history, that's been, I needed to tend with something in my own marriage or in my own relationship with the Lord, or maybe we just had some family stuff we needed to iron out. And I needed to not worry about distractions so much. And so that is one thing that I think is a gift in loneliness. I can think back when my husband deployed in 2008, that is really when I picked up writing again. I'd written a lot as a child, but then college, new married, having babies, I kind of sat it aside. But when he was gone, I picked up that love that I'd had, that I'd let go dormant, and really began to foster and develop that into, where I am today. So I think it can unearth strengths and or just gifts that were hidden, that you hadn't really paid much attention to. But also, I think it can really be a time, like Corrie ten Boom, she said in her book, The Hiding Place, she was probably one of my favorite heroines of the faith, who was in a concentration camp during World War II because her family was discovered for hiding some Jewish folks. And she said, when she was in that camp, she said, you never know that Jesus is all you need until Jesus is all you have. And listen, I've not experienced a season of loneliness at all that could compare to that kind of a horrific situation. But I believe that there are, in our loneliness, we can really receive that word that we are never truly alone in our loneliness. We have Jesus walking with us, pursuing us, wanting relationship with us, wanting to teach us a thing or two. And so, yeah, I definitely think loneliness has its gifts, as long as we keep in mind that loneliness is a season, not a state of things forever and ever. Amen.
Right. How does a person handle rejection from a friend? So, they've kind of parted ways and, something has happened and they feel rejected. How do you handle that?
Yeah. Well, it's just the worst. And for whatever reason, boy, I'm sure coming across stories more and more these days about like friendships that have been together for decades. And suddenly one person changes her mind about the other, and the other doesn't know, like she can't think of, there was no like a dramatic betrayal or anything like that would have led to that. She cannot think of what she did wrong, and she tries to get answers, and the person who breaks off the friendship isn't forthcoming. And I think, gosh, that is just so heartbreaking. So my friend Selena told me a long time ago that sometimes rejection is God's protection against what is not in our best interest. And when I've had a friendship breakup like that happen, boy, those words have been helpful, because the Lord sees everything, like a whole picture, and I see just a little tiny sliver of it. And so I don't know, maybe something was going to happen down the road that if I had stayed in friendship with this person, that would have been much more damaging than to have it break up at this point in my life, even though it's really, really painful. So I think that's one way that one thing I try to keep in mind with friendship rejection is that some way, somehow, it is still a sign of God's protection, God being for me. I think of too about how, rejection is a part of life. And I think sometimes we can think that it's like the end of life. Like this is just ruining my life. And listen, it is not fun. I would rather not have to deal with it, but it is a part of life. And it's like dealing with it is kind of a skill that we need. And sometimes I think we lose that in thinking that it's just the end of life as I know it. And so kind of keeping that in that perspective, not that I look for, yay, I get training on how to be rejected. None of us are asking for that at all. But it is a part of life. We all face rejection. And I think when you're going through it, another thing to remember is it is not about you. It is about something with the other person. Whatever changed with her family life, her bandwidth, her resources to give outside of, maybe her priority family has changed, or something's changed in her internally. And she's dealing with some stuff that, for whatever reason, it can no longer include you. But I think that's helpful too, to know that often rejection that we experience, we want to internalize that and go, gosh, what did I do wrong? How can I prevent this from happening again? It is just so often about the other person, not about you.
Right. What can we do, for the men and women that are listening to this, to help cultivate friendships and to be more intentional about doing that?
Yes. Well, I love that word about being intentional. That's what it requires. When I was a brand new wife, brand new military wife, we moved out of Oklahoma to Ohio, and I kind of acted like friends were supposed to just land on my front porch, like Harry Potter, apparate on the front,
just flock
like
to you.
I had no, yes, I had no skin in the game.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not supposed to have to work for this. Just be here already. And that is sadly not the way it works. But so it requires, I have, at least in my life, and I have a great group of friends now. Certainly am not always. But what I have always found to be true is that it requires more work from me than I think it should. And it requires more work in the beginning than I feel I'm getting a return on. Mm. So I think cultivating those friendships intentionally is just key. And I guess I have like a little saying I like to think I put into action to walk out being intentional. And that is show up, open up, and pray up. So first I got to show up where people are. I cannot just hide in my house all day and expect friends to show up. So I have to get out and about. And when my kids were younger, that meant story time at libraries, at Barnes and Noble. I made one great friend, Sherry, whom we're still friends today, even though we haven't lived in the same town since 2007. But we became friends because we just kept going to the park every day. The kids would wake up from a nap and we'd go to the park and developed a friendship that way. When as I got older, that might have been volunteering in my kids' classroom. That might have been through volunteering at churches, different other or at my home church, different other different volunteer opportunities. And then, in my age and stage of life now, it's really more of just an awareness that I'm never done finding my people. Mm-hmm. I never know when the Lord's going to do a new thing. So I never think, oh, I've checked that off. I've got friends. I don't have to work at it anymore. I do still have to work at it. Mm-hmm. And be intentional about that. So that kind of leads me into the second thing, open up my house. Because I'm a firm believer that if you open up your house, you open up your heart for other people to see a little bit more of you. Now, that doesn't mean you need to live in a museum. Most people don't relax in a museum. Mm-hmm. You feel like you got to kind of sit up straight and all of that. So it does not matter if your house is clean. And all of that. I'll have just coffee or tea. I'm a pie fan. I might just buy a pie at Sprouts has really good pies for like $7 or $8. I might buy one of those to serve, and we have people over for dinner too. And sometimes that dinner is soup and bread, or I will get Papa Murphy's pizza and just make it at home. That's the take and bake. You can just bake it home and then offer pizza, and somebody else might bring a salad. So keeping it easy and low stakes and relaxed, I think, but opening up your house and never thinking, like I was talking about before, like I don't need to invite people over anymore because I have friends. No, because I have friends, I do invite them. I still invite them over, new friends and old friends, just to encourage those relationships. And then pray up. Like we were talking about earlier, the Lord had his friends. And so it is absolutely his heart for us to have our friends. Any listener listening to this today is not the exception to that. Mm-hmm. And so there is tremendous power in praying, like, Lord, bring me friends. Lord, open my eyes to who could be a potential friend and move that person's heart to be interested in a friendship with me. Mm-hmm. So those three things, pray up, in the order I said them, show up, open up, pray up, I think are very helpful for cultivating intentional friendships.
I love that. I think it's very easy for us to sit back and kind of fold our arms and say, well, nobody invited me to do anything. Yes. Nobody asked me to lunch. Nobody. And if we would just extend those invitations, we have no idea who needs to hear that invitation.
Absolutely. There is always room at the table the Lord has in mind for you. And that doesn't, you may be like, but I wanted that table over there. And I get that. There's been some tables I've wanted to be invited to. And the answer is no. Yeah. Like, I don't get invited. And that's just, again, that's because it falls outside of God's best for me. Even though I don't know the particulars of that, that is where I have to land at the end of the day. And then pivot my attention towards those who are interested in developing a friendship with me.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thinking about when we're entering these new friendships, do you have any tips on how we can share about like this major life change that a person may be going through, or maybe a major life change they've come out of, without scaring the friend away, scaring people away?
Right. If I'm a friend with you, I'm a friend with you. I'm not just a fair weathered friend. Mm-hmm. I'm a there for all of you friend. And I think that there is when you have that kind of friendship with somebody, you're happy to listen. You're happy to pray for them. You're happy to ask what you can do on their behalf. And so I think if you are the one sharing that kind of, this potential life transition, this potential life change, I think just keep in mind, like you would share it to the Lord and say that this is happening. These are the facts. This is kind of how I'm feeling about it. Could you please pray in this manner? And I think that any friend worth their salt would be happy to listen and to be there, a space that helps divide the sorrows in that kind of a really difficult season of life for you.
That's great. Well, as we wrap up, let me ask you the last loaded question. How can we be a good friend to someone else? You've told us to show up, open up, and pray up. So when we've invited the people in and we've asked the people to hang out with us, to go play pickleball with us, how do we, act as a good friend to them?
Yeah, I think it is just making the commitment. I think so often we think of certain kinds of relationships like marriages. We think about being intentionally committed, and it sometimes in our friendships maybe we're not so we don't think of it the same way. It's easy to kind of back burner those things. So I think being intentional about committing to that person, texting her, how can you pray for her? And doing that on the regular. I mean, I have a couple of friends, I think they pray for my kids as hard as I do. And boy, let me tell you, nothing will endear a woman to me, even or a fella to me, really. A couple friends, that we have and whatnot, or just male family friends. When they are telling me that they are praying for my kids, or by marriage, I automatically love you. so like I'm on your team then. So that is a real helpful, beautiful thing I think that somebody can do for a friend. And I think another thing is maybe think about bringing rituals to your friendship. You get together every Friday for coffee after work, or you get together Saturday morning or Saturday at lunch, or if it's not every week, maybe the third Saturday of the month, and get together. So you really are feeding that relationship that has to be done. It's best done in person.
Yeah.
I love social media, but and I've met many friends that way. I keep in touch with all three of my children who are scattered hither and yon that way. But but those relationships really need to be kind of brought off screen to have the most benefit in your life, and vice versa.
I have a feeling the benefits of social media, while they are great, that one of the downfalls of social media is that it has lulled us into thinking that those are true friendships, relationships that we have with people on the other side of the screen, when we really do need to have that face-to-face connection and that depth.
Yeah, well, in my research for my forthcoming book, I learned that to have a casual friend, it takes 50 hours of time together. To have a really good, strong friendship, it's 200 to 300 hours.
Wow.
And so, those hours have to be logged beyond just little, bite-sized comments, here and there to somebody's social media posts. And those things are great, that they're best when that's kind of in addition to and not instead of in-person time.
Right. So. Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, okay, we talked in the introduction about your book, but tell us where people can find your book and how they can connect with you.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for asking that. So it's available wherever you like to get books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, but if you have a bookshop or independent bookseller, that you can get it via the bookshop website. But also I have a website that's my name, KristenStrong.com, and you can find the book there. Oh, and it's spelled, Kristen is Kristen, strong.com. But my book is called Desperate Woman Seeks Friends. And then the subtitle is Real Talk talk about connection, rejection, and trying again for the friendships you need. And yeah, that can be found at KristenStrong.com as well. And also, I am on Instagram, so you can always look me up there at Kristen Strong as well.
That's great. Well, Kristen, thanks for sharing with us today about this. I hope that it was encouraging to you and that our listeners are going to walk away with good tips and how to, really cultivate those friendships.
Oh, thank you for having me, Lori. I sure appreciate it and enjoyed my time with you.
Thank you. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Kristen, and it is so important for us to have friendships. We need to have those friendships in our life. And my mom, Charlene, is not with us on today's episode because of a scheduling conflict. But I'm going to tell you what she would tell you. When she was walking through her stand for marriage restoration, she had several close friends, but she had one really close friend that she's talked about many times that was like her prayer partner. And that was the one that she would really open up to and share the good, the bad, and the ugly with. She didn't go into that level of depth with all of her friends. And she wasn't trying to withhold things from her friends, but instead she was trying to protect my dad. She was trying to protect their marriage and their relationship and not have the nitty gritty of what was happening in her life out for the world to hear. And so as you're, walking through friendships, just keep that in mind. The comment she would make to people is just pray for him. Just pray for him. When they would say, "How's Bob?" She didn't need to stop and tell them, "Well, 2 nights ago he was in a bar and we couldn't find him." And she didn't need to say any of that. God knew what was going on with that situation. And she would just say, "Just pray for him." And, after the fact, when their marriage was restored, it was so powerful for him to know that he could walk back into that circle of friends, back into the church where we had grown up, and not have the shame thinking the whole world knows every inner working of what has happened over the past few years. Instead, he walked in knowing that there was people who had genuinely been praying for him. And the person that knew a lot of the details was the one who first walked up to him to show him love and forgiveness and acceptance. And so just keep that in mind as you're, going down this journey and working on new friendships, navigating friendships that may have changed as your relationship has changed, and, inviting new people in. I'm going to tell you, the hardships of life that we walk through, it opens up an opportunity for new relationships and new friendships. And so you're going to probably find that you're going to meet new people that need your love, your friendship because of what you're going through. And so I hope that you see this season as a season of opportunity, that God can use you, and it's not just a season of waiting and sitting idle. So I hope this encouraged you. We would love to know your thoughts on this episode, so you can reach out to us at rejoiceministries.org and share with us how this episode spoke to you. And we would also love to know if you have any ideas for episodes that you would like to see us cover. So you can share that as well. So until next time, keep fighting for your marriage. Bye.